Welcome, Automating Success Show guests. I'm here today with Marcus from Frosty Flake, and what's kind of cool today is Marcus is my guinea pig. I have yet to do a podcast where I'm live out in the elements here. I'm if you're on YouTube, you can see my background. That's a live shot of palm trees swaying in the wind. I'm out here at a club at the Ibis where we installed the four pickers and two cutters. And I had some meetings out here today, and Marcus was nice enough to just go with the flow and be a great guest and let me remote log in. So if we have any technical difficulties, this is, part of hustling like you do, Marcus, like I do. You got to take these sometimes in weird spots. But Marcus, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your company, Frosty Flake. I know about it, but the guests don't know about it. So let us know what's it about.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Joe. And you're definitely avoiding the snow down there, so that's pretty good. Yeah.
For the time being, anyways.
Yeah. So I'm Marcus Curley. I live in Laramie, Wyoming, and about a year ago, I came across a problem that was pretty interesting. I was actually a CIO in the insurance industry before starting Frosty Flake, and I'll start it out with this: is that the key premise of Frosty Flake, the question is how do you know if it's snowing, right? And a lot of people would say, well, that's pretty simple, right? I just look out the window or I look at my favorite forecast app, etc. Well, the way that this problem really came is I've got a good friend who has a snow removal company, and he told me the worst part of his job was that he literally was always checking the weather, and it was through archaic ways, right? And as I explored further on that, across the United States, is like, oh my gosh, this is a real problem. And so what Frosty Flake does is, instead of having folks, calling gas stations around town, setting alarms, waking up, driving around, it helps to automate that. And so what it does is it actually uses its proprietary AI, its artificial intelligence, to essentially look out the window. And we've got 20,000 locations across the US that are pre-built into it. There's no hardware required. There's not even an app. But what it does is you select the locations that you want us to monitor, and then it watches, just like a human would, for the weather that you're interested in. We don't do any forecasting. And when it sees that, it sends you a text alarm with imagery if it's available, and lets you know, hey, it's snowing or it's raining, or, we do all kinds of different weather.
So that's amazing. So, this, but some people listening may not. I also have a snow removal company, and when I saw you at the show in Ohio, and we were already using your product, but I realized, like, you are definitely automating people's success, because that was one of the hardest things for me as a president and CEO of Langton Group, to hand off to somebody, because you have to have a very high degree of trust, to say, okay, I'm going to let the most important decision-making process, in my opinion, in the industry, I have to give it to somebody else. So, how do you go about earning those people's trust, to say, okay, I'm gonna let this go. I'm gonna take this burden off of myself?
That's a great question. And that's usually how we start, right? Is a lot of folks are, they're used to watching that weather. And, you guys have contracts and things that you got to keep. And of course, if you come late to a storm, that makes it even harder. So really what we do is we offer a 14-day free trial. So try it out, right? And then what's cool about Frosty Flake is that we can tweak the settings to what works for you and your locations. And then the other piece about trust is that after you try it with the AI, it's always learning. So just like a human would, with the more experience it gets in a certain location, the better it's going to be. And one success story that we saw from last season, we've got a subscriber who's re-upping with us this year. And last year, I think that they used around 5 or 6 different managers across their geography to watch the weather physically. And this year, they told me, they said, you know what, we're just going to go down to one in Frosty Flake, right? So it's usually kind of a graduated, tiptoe your way into it and use it, but we try to price it in a way that's cost effective for folks to be able to do that, and still use a little bit of human interaction too. So
So what geographic area are they covering? You know, so that so people listening to this kind of understands like what type of area you guys can cover and what types of clients that you have, you know.
Yeah. So since we started, so I created the company October 1st, 2020. We went to market November 1st. So we're about a year old now. In our first year now, we've been in 9 different states. So we're all the way from Alaska to the Northeast and in between. So we've got clients that cover pretty much all of Illinois. We're in Boston, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, a lot of areas in Alaska as well, Colorado, Wyoming. So rural areas, which Wyoming is a rural area, but a great place to have a snow technology. We do that as well as having metro areas that have densely populated areas. So we're in both and have different use cases for both.
So do you see a certain area where you guys are coming out to be just a better solution than others, or is it about the same? I mean, like, you know, I heard you say Alaska. I'm assuming, you know, that's a very uh, data sparse, I'm assuming, area. So I'm just wondering how you go about collecting this data, getting these images, and getting it back to the AI. You know, how do you guys do that in all these different areas?
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of part of our secret sauce, but typically,
So you don't have to divulge in that secret sauce. Just give us the 40,000 foot view of the secret, you know.
yeah, yeah. The
So
40,000 foot view is that, um, we've actually we actually have just great coverage. I'll just be blunt. Like, I'm
yeah,
pretty satisfied because we have pretty much where there's people, we've got really good coverage. Where there's not as many people, Wyoming is a perfect example of that. I mean, we have 600,000 people in the whole state. We still have really good coverage. And when there's not even imagery available, that's okay because we use standard weather data that a lot of other folks use as well. So um, that really enables us out of the box to have about those 20,000 locations. And it's super easy. You sign up in 5 minutes and ready to go. So
yeah. No, that's really amazing. So let's, before we go too deep into me trying to get your secret sauce exposed out here on an hour show, you know, you kind of brought up your background, you brought up kind of what made you realize it, but explain kind of how you got started building it. You know, I mean, the reality of it is with the show, it's like I want to inspire people to follow their passions and their hearts and build on their ideas.
yeah,
So, you know, I'm assuming, much like myself, this was very easy for you because you were passionate about it. But kind of take us through the process a little, if you don't mind,
yeah,
to get
yeah.
this idea started up.
No, that's cool. So my background is that I grew up big technologist. So been in systems, networking infrastructure, security, done a lot of automation on big scale, right, on enterprise scale type things. And so when I ran across this problem, it was literally as innocently as having lunch with my friend and asking him, what's the worst part of your job, right? And he said, well, I get up at night and I look out the window. And when we said, well, is there anything better than that? Right? We found tons and tons of forecast information. But the way I looked at it is I thought, well, if I was going to solve this, and this was just, throwing ideas at the wall, if I was going to solve this, how would I do it? And I thought, well, I'm not going to make a better weather model. I'm not going to make better sensors. I'm not going to do anything to the weather data, right? But what's the time tested approach that's worked forever and ever and ever about knowing what the weather's doing? Well, it's looking out the window, right?
Yeah,
And so I
yeah,
thought, well, shoot, you know what? Like, I could do that. I could scale that right back to my automation experience and background, which really is a huge driver for me. As I thought, well, I could solve this problem not just for my friend, but I could solve this for lots of people if it's out there. And so went home and wrote the first proof of concept in a little while, and it worked. And then we just kept building from there and testing it out. It was pretty innocent and simple. And the next thing you know, it was like, okay, well, it's October 2020. This thing seems to have some traction and some legs and some real benefit to folks. Why not try to commercialize it? So that's what I did.
yeah. So how did, I mean, knowing that you came from other areas in technology, you know, how did you get here? Did you have other things you started up and sold? Were you working in those other spaces? Kind of explain that a little to me.
No, yeah. So this is my first venture as far as my own. So beforehand, worked at big universities, a couple of Fortune 500 companies, and then also was in insurance in IT. And so it was always working at an enterprise scale. So what was cool about that is I brought my technical hands-on ability along with my business knowledge and just kind of being curious, and bolted that together with my enterprise experience to create Frosty Flake. So really, it's a scalable enterprise technology that runs in the cloud, right? That's pretty darn elastic, and quite honestly, it's been a lot of fun. And then I've always had a curiosity and just a great passion for business in general. So this has just been a great fun year.
Yeah. Well, and Marcus, you brought something up that I want to expand on is that, in this emerging technology space, in the space of all this technology that's emerging, it seems like the huge void of people are the people that can do what you did, where you merge that enterprise value with your hands-on abilities. I mean, personally, for me, that's where I'm finding the majority of our successes. Manufacturers of equipment or automation, they're good at making it, but they're really not people. They can work at a bench and do work. And then the other thing is they have the stuff, but then they really can't figure out the best use of it. So I feel like there's all these layers of things that can automate and help professionals, just ripe for the picking. Would you agree with that, like, thought process,
Oh yeah. Oh, totally, totally. And it's really interesting to look at different industries as well, like landscaping, snow removal. I had no idea before I started this company about what types of opportunities are out there, and there's a lot, right? This is one
Yeah.
of them with Frosty Flake. But then you look at things like from insurance to automobiles. I mean, there's so many things that kind of interweave together, but there is just a lot of opportunity. So
Well, and I even look, I mean, okay, so your company's name is Frosty Flake, but I look at, as I sit here on this golf course, in Florida, this is the next thing that's going to keep me up at night. And as I do the show with you, I know you're going to probably be able to help. I've got, in Florida, you can have 2 inches of rain in 30 minutes at
yeah.
this location in West Palm, but up the street might not have any. So you can't just rely on a weather forecast to say, oh yeah, it's going to rain in West Palm, because
Mhm.
so like, you and I have to figure out a way to have it where I can access something here to be like, it's pouring there, park all the robots. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got that figured out, or you'll have a solution for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the cool thing is we're just getting started, right? So the AI that we have right now is extensible, meaning we can use it in all kinds of different things, not just for rain, but we can extend it to, I mean, way, way beyond where it is right now. So it's got so much potential. And what you mentioned, so we have subscribers right now that use the annual subscription that we have to flip it back and forth for snow and rain, right? We have a subscriber in Rapid City, South Dakota, who uses it for his landscaping company, and he's watching a big geography, physical geography, to know, okay, well, I need to move my crew to the east side of town because we've got a lot of rain going on the west side, but not on the east side. So to your point about the 2 inches of rain in Florida in one area, I mean, that's essentially what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. So then how do you guys break it down then? Is it like in zip code areas? Like, is it like, so how do you guys do that? And then, if you don't mind, how does the kind of pricing structure work? Because obviously as companies are larger and larger, it could get pricey, but I'm sure there's some price breaks, on that. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So right now what we have is we've got our 20,000 points, and they're really spread out pretty evenly across the country. We don't do zip codes. It's basically just lat longs plotted on places that have, a lot of people, typically where people are at. So that's where we start. We have the ability to do custom points if we need to. We haven't had the need to yet. And then as far as pricing structure, so we start out, we've got 3 packages. It's all subscription based, just like Netflix, right? So we have a month to month that starts out at $35 a month per location. So the more locations you select, that's going to be 35 times X. But then, like you mentioned, right, as you get into a few more locations, then we have price breaks, and we have corporate custom pricing for bigger folks. Then we have and of course that one has a 14-day free trial, so you can try it out. You can cancel it after a month, whatever. We have a winter season subscription that is $30 a month essentially for winter season. So we try to capture everybody's winter. So typically from September through the end of April, and then that takes you through winter. And then we have an annual subscription, which is the cheapest per month price. And that allows you to do things. So if you're doing like snow removal in the wintertime and maybe paving or construction or landscaping, and we have those folks flip it over to rain and they use it for all kinds of different things in the summertime. So that's our pricing model, and yeah, it's been pretty well received so far. So
Awesome. So I was doing some research on you, as all podcasters should do, and I noticed something that says you're a culture first executive leader. Break down what that means, to you, in your words.
Yeah, my words. What does that mean, right? So when I'm leading a team, right, which is a very different situation than right now, right, because I don't have a huge enterprise behind me. But when I'm, in a CIO chair, just a manager chair, one of the things that is probably the number one driver for me is trying to treat people like people, right? I mean, just manage people like people. And, what that means to me is trying to create a good culture to where, it's pretty cool, because what happens is when you do that, you treat people like people, it retains people, so they want to stick with you. And then as you get, basically a big group of them, then it starts to attract people to it as well. And so I've been successful in my career, as a CIO and doing that to Laramie, Wyoming, which, trust me, recruiting to Laramie, Wyoming isn't the easiest thing, and keeping them there. So having that culture first piece, and then really the biggest piece of that altogether is having a focus on grace. And that's not how good at dancing you are. What that means to me is that, I'm gonna try to give you something that you don't deserve, right? And I need that too. I need that grace from other people, because guess what? I'm gonna mess up, and I'm gonna expect folks to mess up on my team as well. And that's where we all need that grace. And if in my experience, if you can actually do that and practice it with your folks consistently, you're gonna have a pretty strong culture. So
Yeah. Well, and I have to honestly say, like, companies like yours actually help in that culture, because, I've always felt bad, because we're the same way. We want to have a great culture. We want to be a place somebody has to work, but nobody wants to get up in the middle of the night and see if it's snowing when it's not snowing. Nobody wants to have the burden to make a decision that could be wrong. I think it's snowing out there. Let's get everybody rolling. So I mean, I just personally say, I think, technology like yours helps people want to stay at a place, and then also helps them not feeling the burdens of that decision making process. So I think it's just kind of funny how the tech space you got into kind of fits into that culture based, be a great place to work type of thoughts. I just want to applaud you for that and bring it up. So how are you going about, like, getting the word out and scaling this? So now you've got this great idea, right? It's here. I think you said it's not app based, so how do you go about spreading the word?
Oh man, so being on great podcasts like this, number one, right?
Oh, I'm blushing. I might be too tan to see it.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
No, but seriously, I mean, it's a cool industry. I really have had a lot of fun getting to know folks, and what I'm seeing is it's a very word of mouth industry. So just trying to talk to people, getting the word out through social media. I'm big on LinkedIn, Facebook. We've got a company page there, talking to people. So we went to Philadelphia, Cleveland, and Minneapolis with SIMA this summer, and just met a ton of folks. Got to talk to a lot of people all over the country. Went to another one, a public show in Loveland. So really, it's a lot of just talking to people, having them try it out, see what they like, see what they don't like, and then working from there. So
Have you ever thought to try to hook up with some of the private forecasters in the industry, like TDS or True Weather, or any of those people, just so you can kind of link into their customer base and network back and forth with each other?
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far, quite frankly. So
I'd like to make an introduction for you. I mean, we that's a service we've been using, and I feel like, just personally, hopefully you don't mind me saying this, I just feel like it would be a great introduction and a great way for you guys to service your customers on both sides,
yeah,
because they issue a forecast, and they're looking for that real-time data also, so
yeah,
it's like, it's like I can imagine there's people that'll call these private weather forecasting companies and be like, when's it going to start to snow? And they're looking at a radar that shows it should be snowing, but the air is dry and it's just virga. And they're literally just waiting to hear from somebody that it started to snow.
yeah,
So I can just, I truly see like a relationship there with one of those players. And Beth and Joseph Cooper were actually on my podcast. It's TDS Weather. I'd like to get you connected with those two, and
yeah. That'd be great.
maybe even the guys from True Weather. I think it'd be good for you.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is I've actually had radio stations call me up, and they've
No
said
kidding.
like, yeah, they're like, hey, I'm the meteorologist in X and X and X town, right? And they're like, we have people calling all the time asking that very question, like, so when is it actually going to start snowing, right? And they're like, Frosty Flake, that sounds pretty cool. So who knows? I mean, who knows
Yeah,
where
you
it's
see,
going to
you
go?
should be telling them to give you some free advertising. Be
Yeah,
like, yeah, say the name of my company every 30 minutes, and I'll give you the reports all day.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, well, that's awesome. That's totally cool. Um, so I mean, do you have any competitors in the space right now? I mean, are you really the only person doing it, or are there a couple others that are starting to emerge?
Um, for real time observation based weather, we're it as far as I know. So, I mean, I guess you could look at it as competitors, but there's all the different weather players out there, right? That have forecast information and look back information and all kinds of things like that. But, for what we're doing, we're pretty unique. We're pretty niche. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So what, you know, you said you don't really have a big team, but like, what does your team right now consist of, in this space, because that's the one thing that always interests me in technology is you can become a very dominant player in the market, but people expect you to have hundreds and hundreds of people, and it's not as necessary. So if you don't
yeah.
mind.
Yeah. No, you're good. So you're looking at him, you're talking to the team. So,
So you wear a lot of hats is what you're telling me.
yeah, I wear a lot of hats, but I'm very blessed to be quite frank with you. So right now I have I don't have people on staff, but I have an army of pretty much everything I need, which is really cool, from legal and insurance and accounting and all that business minutia stuff, right?
Yeah.
To mentors, from different industries, like in Chicago. So I've got a brain trust from pretty much all over the country. I've been very fortunate to have backing from Microsoft. So to build an enterprise technology that scales, at least for me, with Frosty Flake, I don't need an army of people to develop and write code and maintain things and work in data centers, is because I'm partnered with Microsoft, and I've got a huge backing from them.
All right. So now that interests me. How did not saying I'm not interested by anything else, but how did how did you get that relationship? Was it from prior, like, your past endeavors, or, because that's a
No,
pretty big relationship, Marcus, I got to tell you. you
yeah, it
know
was cool. So no, again, just a huge blessing. Like, Microsoft saw what we were doing, and they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, would you like to team up with us on this?" So
Oh,
yeah,
that's really amazing, and it's inspiring. It's like, because you never, right, I'm sure that was just a out of the blue phone call. You had to have chills. I mean, I almost have chills for you when you got off that call, right? That had to be an exciting phone call.
oh yeah, it was huge. And the great thing about Wyoming, I'll tell you this, is that we're small from a people standpoint, but there's so much opportunity. And when people probably think about Wyoming, I can only imagine what types of thoughts come across their mind. But
Probably that
Wyoming,
Zoom, probably your Zoom background.
yeah,
That's what thought comes up. That's what I think of right there.
yeah,
So
but it's,
for the people listening on the show, I'm sorry, Marcus. It's literally a bunch of evergreen trees. Some don't look so green. It looks like they're about ready to be tinder and catch on fire. That's pretty much the background, you know. So, and
yeah,
a really nice clear blue sky with a cloud, you know. But anyways,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. That's a picture from about 40 miles west of where I live in Laramie, and so we're in the southeast corner of the state. And what I would say about Wyoming is it's a great place because it's a hidden gem, especially from an entrepreneurial and technology standpoint. And so I've had the opportunity to participate and win 2 startup comps. I'm part of a generator accelerator right now called G Beta. That I'm getting a lot of great exposure to folks. So when I mentioned earlier about who's on your team, well, it's just me and the company, but I've got so much backing from so many different folks. And then the great thing is, like, Microsoft is right in our back door in Cheyenne with a data center. That's actually where Frosty Flake runs in Azure, in the Azure cloud. So, um, yeah, it's just been a lot of fun, and Wyoming is a great place to do it. So,
yeah, well, that's awesome. So, have you been in Wyoming? I mean, how long have you been in Wyoming then? Like
pretty much my
forever, or
whole life. Yeah,
really?
yeah, yeah. I grew up in a little town called Douglas. It's about 5,000 people when I lived there. Grew up, and my parents, my mom stayed at home, and my dad was a railroad engineer for 42 years on the coal line, and they're retired now, just loving life. And then I went to the University of Wyoming here in Laramie and did my computer science and my MBA here, and then just kind of went from there. So
Yeah. So now that you have your own endeavor, do you miss? I mean, like, so for me, I, I love being being the person, the decision maker. You know, do you love it? Are you loving the experience? Do you miss the enterprise stuff that you were doing? Like, kind of explain that feeling.
yeah, that's a great question. There's parts of it that I miss, the big enterprise stuff, but I would say that I've said this before on podcasts, is the great thing about having your own thing is that unless I develop a multiple personality, like, I don't have to deal with politics and decisions, right? It's
Yeah.
pretty easy. So that's good to get buy-in and things like that. I think having the resources of an enterprise is something that you got to learn how to figure out and work with when you don't have that. Which I think we're doing a pretty good job of that so far. And but no, I mean, it's a totally different experience. And one thing that I really enjoy about it is it's super diverse, right? So from a technology perspective, I mean, I can take this thing wherever I want, right? And it's exceedingly diverse just on that front. But what's really neat is all the business development, running a business, creating it, scaling it, trying to scale it, trying to grow it. I mean, that's something that you're not going to get in a lot of different enterprise roles, right? Because you're going to be focused on one thing or another. So,
Yeah. Great answer. So, I mean, I ask this question sometimes, but I actually feel like I already know the answer. So, did the pandemic seem to hurt you at all in any way? I'm assuming maybe it would, snow removal needs to get done no matter what, but I don't know, so knowing how you had to get out and just talk to people and go to shows, do you think that hurt your scaling right now, or?
yeah, I would say that it probably has hurt a little bit just because not everybody felt comfortable to go to the shows.
Yeah.
And this was our first time going to the shows this last summer. So everybody that I spoke with said that, this is kind of depressed from what we normally see. And, that's okay. I mean, we still met a lot of people and it was a great experience, but we're excited for hopefully next summer when, everybody is safe and ready to go full tilt. So,
Yeah. So you said that you've lived out there your whole life. You talked about your mom and dad a little bit. How about your family? Give me a little more background on Marcus.
yeah, yeah. So, again, I'm blessed. I have a great big family and then a great small family is kind of how I characterize it. So my folks are still in Douglas. My sister and her husband live in Casper, Wyoming. She's a teacher and he's an engineer. My little brother lives in Rapid City and he actually has his own landscaping business. but he's a full-time firefighter and paramedic, so he's doing that on the side. So that's been great because he's kind of a guinea pig for different things to beta test, right, from a
Uh-huh.
landscape perspective. And then my wife, Allison, she's from Laramie, and her family lives here in Laramie, her parents anyways. So my wife, Allison, and I, we've got 2 children. Our daughter is 4. Her name is Madeline. And then we have a son, Carter, who is 1. And I tell you what, they're awesome. They're so much fun, and we have just a great time. And the beauty part about being so close to each other. I mean, Douglas is only 2 hours away, Casper's only 2.5 hours away, and Rapid's not much further. Is that we get to, hang out with each other, see each other, go ride motorcycles, go camping and hiking and fishing and all kinds of fun stuff. So
That's Madeline. That's not a name you hear every day. It's very, very beautiful name. So
no thanks.
good pick there. I yeah, I tell people all the time, like, the kids are one of the best things, so that's one of the reasons I like having my own businesses, is because I was able to see all my daughter's volleyball events, and I feel like going back to your enterprise, or working for larger companies, I feel like that would be harder for people. So that's, personally, I've always felt blessed being able to do that. I'm sure you probably feel the same. So the do you have any like mentors? I mean, like, you kind of said how you got inspired to do it, but did you always want to have your own business? Like, I mean, because I'm just wondering what clicked for you to be like, I'm doing this now.
It was a whole bunch of things that lined up, right? And so I've had a lot of people over my career say, Marcus, I think you should start your own thing, right? And I've always said, well, I don't know that I've got that good of an idea.
Yeah,
right?
a good idea is part of it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, what am I going to sell? What am I going to do? And so I was never adverse to starting anything, but just never really had anything, a lightning bolt hit me, I guess. And so it was just perfect timing and perfect opportunity. And so Frosty Flake came along, and it was like, wow, this idea is kind of crazy and weird, but let's try it. And then, as we talked to folks across the nation, it was like, yeah, this would actually help people, and let's go for it. Let's give it full attention.
So I don't think I did a good job asking, in letting you explain. So, like, how do people get on? They get a text message, like how are you getting these people up out of bed? Maybe let's backtrack a little on the process.
Yeah. So it's as innocuous as saying, okay, we sign up for location. Let's say, I think you guys are in Woodstock, Illinois, right?
Yeah, good, very good. I'm impressed. Yeah.
So you could take Woodstock as an example. So what'll happen is when it starts snowing for a period of time. So we don't do things on depth; we do it on duration, because depth is kind of misleading at times, and you'll never be happy with me, because especially in Wyoming, you look in one area and there's 6 feet of snow, in another area there's nothing, right? So
Yeah.
based off of time, so let's say 10-minute duration, it'll actually send you and whoever you sign up a text for Woodstock saying we've observed snow or rain or whatever for 10 minutes. And then if there's imagery around nearby, what it'll do is it'll send that imagery along with it, so you can sit there in real time and say, okay, well, this is what's going on, right? And then what's cool is you sign up for more locations around where you service, and you'll see different points light up at different times. A fast moving storm might come in and hit them all at the same time, and they'll light up, right? You might see something come in from one direction or another, and it'll light up half of them, but not the other half. And so what we've had folks do is they say, well, geez, like, I know that I don't need to have my crew go out west because the thing's moving in the east, or it's bouncing off of a mountain range, or if it's bouncing off of a lake effect or an ocean effect type snow situation. And that's it. I mean, we wanted it to be as simple as possible. And a lot of folks that we've talked to, they're like, oh my gosh, please, not another app. And we're like, it's not another app, so we're good.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what's amazing that I want to talk about real quick is, I didn't think about it till you talked about the mountain stuff, is, out in the mountainous areas, a lot of times it can be snowing like crazy and there's just no radar coverage. That's one thing for us in Illinois. We're kind of very lucky. It's flatlands. If that radar says it's snowing, unless there's dry air in place, it's snowing. But out by you guys, there's probably, and I've seen this, I've witnessed this, where you look on a radar and you just see a map, but it could be snowing like crazy, right? So that's a huge value that you guys offer for people like that.
Absolutely. And what's really cool is when there's an unforecasted storm or an unseen storm by radar. So we had that exact same thing happen out in the Northeast last April, which was a really, really cool, show of our value proposition. Totally unforecasted storm, client with zero tolerance sites. They were planting flowers that hadn't snowed in 3 weeks where they are. They were in a different part of town. And this thing, it started snowing like crazy, big chunky flakes. Frosty Flake saw it where they weren't, sent them text alarms, and they went and serviced their zero tolerance sites. And it's like, well, how did you guys know that it was going to snow? Because it wasn't forecast. And it's like, well, we have Frosty Flake. It's always watching, right? So
yeah. Well, and I even know what I'm trying to do with robotics. I'm looking at it more of not to say I'm going to use robots to plow snow. I'm going to use robots to de-ice, and I just, sit and think, okay, literally I would want to have your setup at every one of my sites, because the way I want to do robotics for me is, everybody's trying to figure out how you can take a truck and drive it down the road, or a machine and move it. But, what I've learned with my robotic mowers are just leave them on the site. Use a small unit, leave it there. So then I look at your service and say, okay, well, how can we, kind of layer together or come up with a solution? And it's like, okay, I could see a day where you're like, hey, Joe, it's Frosty Flake says it's snowing at Costco and Bolingbrook, and me be like, okay, boom, hit the button, and the robot goes out and starts spreading de-icer. That's what's like really cool about what you do. And you brought up in the Northeast. Even lake effect snow. Think about in all these lake effect snow belts, how often it snows and it never shows up on radar. Or so now, sorry, I'm just starting to think now about all the different things. So like even like freezing fog. Do you guys have ability to see clear enough to actually be able to see? Obviously, fog, is very localized and sparse, so you've got to be able to see no visibility and realize it's fog, right? Is that something you guys are doing also?
Yeah, we can do that. We're right now, the AI isn't tuned for fog, but we could do
Okay.
that. Yeah. So we could do that. To expound on that. Like, we could do that for dust storms. We could do it for fog. We could do it for smoke. There's all kinds of other things that we can play with.
So in all your AI is probably just going into one server, right? So it's like the more locations you have, the smarter it's getting from all the locations. Am I right thinking that's the way it is for you guys?
Yeah, think about it like this. Think about it like a human, right? If you could look out the window in 50 locations across the country, if you did that for a year, you'd be pretty dang good at understanding what different conditions were outside all those windows, right? Just because of experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're taking the experience of all of these sites and just getting better and better and better.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I always think is interesting. And when I talk to people about automation, when I'm out there pounding the pavement like you are, is, I'm always trying to explain to people, like, listen, there's some great technology out there, but the more we start to use it, the better it all gets. I guess even when you look at Google, the more people use it, the better it gets. All of these platforms like that just gets better and better and better. So I know it's pretty good. It's a pretty awesome space, that you're in. So, I feel like you already answered it. It sounds like you're really in this role you're in. It's probably easy to balance your life with the business, right? Because it probably, for me, my friend Austin Rabine said it best in one podcast. It's like, for entrepreneurs, it's kind of a circular balance. It's all tied in. But I'm assuming when you say you're going on motorcycle rides and stuff in Wyoming, you're able to scale this thing up and still enjoy your life.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love my life. I really do. But there's this is just kind of the entrepreneur person, I guess, is that I'm really always looking at the next thing. And I really want to scale this thing. It's built to scale, and
Yeah.
I want to help as many people as we can across really more than the United States, but at least right now, the United States.
So are you working with anybody to help you scale it? I mean, besides you, I mean, how, if you really want to
Yeah.
scale it, because I'm,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
running into that same thing right now.
Yeah. So through things like accelerator programs, I've got some good opportunities there. I've got some other things I can't talk about right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, we've got all kinds of things in the pipeline to really try to help supercharge stuff. So
Well, I, uh, I can tell you, I think that a lot of it'll come natural, but in technology, you've got to move, I understand what you're up against. You got to move fast before somebody else moves quicker. So I, uh, I wish you the best with that. So basically, you know, I guess I'll just ask the question now. So when you started this, like, what do you want to be remembered for when you scale this thing up? And Marcus just crushes this, Do you want to be remembered for the tech? Do you want to be remembered for the solution? Combination,
at the end of the day, whatever I'm doing, I want to be remembered for the character. I want to bring a strong amount of integrity and character to what I do. And those business relationships are really important to me, whether I'm, in an enterprise or whether it's Frosty Flake. And so that's what I want to be remembered is that, we had a great service. It helped a lot of folks. But at the end of the day, Marcus and his company were good to work with, easy to work with, and, always gave you their best shot. So,
yeah. Well, there you have it. I think that's it's I think you have a great solution. I'd recommend, and since we use it, I mean, I'd recommend anybody listening to the show to give it a try. Um, I know we like it on our team, and I'm just that in itself should be the best testament. I mean, it's a simple solution. It's really, when you think about it, it's not a lot of money, and even going off of your price, I mean, you got to pay a person to be on call,
yeah.
so you're going to do it anyways. You might as well use Frosty Flake.
Well, and to build on that, Joe, and I really appreciate that endorsement, but, to build on that, the bigger companies have that, but what about the smaller guys? So there's, single operators out there that, I mean, think about the burden, right? I mean, you've got
Well,
the burden when there's the big group, but you've got the single guy who's watching for the storm and then has to deal with it himself or herself.
well, and I'm actually glad you brought that up before we ended, because I guess for me, I forget. It's like you grow, and then you got hundreds of people, but you forget what it was like when it was just you. And one of the hardest things to expand on that was, you know, people always assume the snow professional starts working when it started to snow. They don't
Yeah.
realize that there's a ton of work that went into making sure the equipment is working before it snows. And then you're thinking, okay, I've got to try to at least get 4 hours of sleep so I don't I don't drive my car off the side of the mountain, and then you're waking up to check, and then the anxiety that you have waiting for it to snow. I mean, that's the one thing we didn't talk about, is the
Yeah.
anxiety of saying I have to sleep, but you can't, because you've got to be the person to make the decision. And then and then once it does start to snow, now you feel tired, because you're like, well, it's snowing, I got to go to work, and it's like, oh shit, I'm tired now, I got to go to sleep. So yeah, no, I mean, you, that's right. I did, it is really a value for the smaller operator, or the few person company. So I'm glad you added that. That's actually a great point.
Yeah, yeah. We try to, we've got some bigger folks and we've got some smaller folks, and we try to help everybody. And um, yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a very burdensome job, and I don't think there's a lot of folks that really understand outside the industry how it works. I
Yeah.
didn't, but I've learned a lot in the last year. It's been really great.
Yeah. So, I didn't ask this. I just realized it was in the research, and I'm sorry we're throwing it on the back end, but you've got Curley Enterprises. Is that something, is that like, was the start and then you went to Frosty Flake, or is there something completely different I didn't even hit on with you?
No, yeah. So Frosty Flake is the service, right? So it's the name of the product. Curley Enterprise is the umbrella, right? So I've got all kinds of other fun ideas we haven't developed yet, but the idea is that this isn't we're not a one trick pony if everything goes well.
So what you're telling me, this is just the first of many podcasts that you and I get to do together.
Sure. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Listen, I like the repeat guests. The first time is like the icebreaker. After that, it just gets easier and easier. So,
Yeah.
so awesome. Well, Marcus, it's been a great show. It's kind of probably a short and sweet one for me, but honestly, I think we covered everything that I felt like we should get the guests knowing about how you can help automate their success. Unless there's anything you'd like to add, I just want to thank you for being on the show. You were a great guest. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate you and Langton for all the support that you've given, and just this podcast today. And I would tell folks that are listening, get in touch with us if you're interested. You just want to try it out. We're looking to not just get customers, but to have partners, right? And so hit us up at frostyflake.com or give us a call 307-314-9598. So
That's awesome. All right, Marcus. Well, thanks. You have a great day.
yeah, you too, Joe. Enjoy the sunny weather there.